Yeah, brown bacon.
Hi Sumit, welcome to the Ground Bacon.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
What's your usual Saturday looks like?
So I am not a person who would look for okay, what's the next venue I want to cover. So I'm more of an indoor person. So even just today I had 3-4 books delivered, and I was just looking forward to if this was not happening, I would have just gone to my bed and just read those books. So yeah, mostly
You read a lot otherwise?
I read a lot, and I think like I don't know if it's always a good thing. Reason being, then I never had a lot of friends, and I just found my solace in books and the characters and the stories there. So that got me hooked. And I think that's how.
Do you want to name some books that you ordered today?
Totally. So I think one thing I very early in my career, and I just call them gurus. I don't like the term mentors. So one of them, she mentioned that she always read 3 books at a time. One is a self-help book, one is a fiction book, and one is something that helps you achieve whatever you want to achieve, skill wise. So I have this book which I'm very curious about. It's AI in 2041. I am very bad with names, but I'll definitely send you those. But that book is all about. So I don't know if you've seen this Netflix series, on all the dystopian futures. It has 6 seasons now. I'm not able to recall the
Is
name.
it no?
So I mean, it is episode after episode, and it's just all about what if future and AI takes over the world.
Is it an animated one?
No, it's not.
Cool.
But that book is written in that way that it starts with a story, and it's all a very scary future where AI has taken over, and then it at the end of the chapter it breaks down as to what was the technology used behind that, how AI thinks, and how it can take decisions for you. So the conventional books which teach you about AI in a very theoretical way, this has a very different approach. So that's one book that I'm super excited to read. Then one is on I read a lot of Osho, so there's another book on
absolutely
Osho.
love it. Which one's your favorite one?
Yes, mine is, I think it started with this book called Creativity by Osho, and it actually blew my mind as to how ideas flow in, and probably I won't talk about that in a bit, but ideas, I have a very different theory as to how ideas come to us and come to a lot of us, and how they they get built upon. So that's one. And then there is one which was recommended to me a lot. It's Vegetarian by Hank Kang, and then there is Midnight Library. So these are the books that currently
I've read a lot. Of Osho.
Okay.
It's crazy. I think we can gonna have a different podcast for that.
Absolutely, yes.
Awesome. So, Sumit, the first time I saw you, speaking about your work, talking about your work, was at Mintra's meetup, and what I absolutely love about the way you were kind of converting ideas to sort of execution, and because of AI, I think it has become very easy to create things, but to think about those ideas in itself is something that's very tasteful, I feel, from the kind of stuff you've been doing. Tell us about how you've been thinking. I think yesterday as well, you made an Indian desert, street desert, and it could just fit as it is into a product. Tell us about that. How do you come up with these ideas?
Totally. So I think if I recall as to what was the first time I started getting these ideas, probably it would be 5th, 6th, 7th standard, where if you remember, we had these school projects that teachers expect us to do apart from the regular coursework, and I had just one thing in mind, that my project, when my teacher is collecting it, she should just have one expression, which is, wow, this is something different. And that was it. And probably I also would consider that as my entry into design. Of course, there's a lot of facets that I learned later, but this part where I just need people to look at my work and just say, wow. And for that matter, I've also been given a nickname by my colleagues, which is a limelight hogger, which is you always want to be in the limelight. And I wanted to be in the limelight, but for all the right and valid reasons. So these things. And of course, lot later when I got diagnosed with ADHD is when I realized that probably that also had to play some part, that I could never sit still. And I have a twin brother, and identical twins, so we always found solace in one another's conversations, and we never felt the need to have like more friends. So both at an IQ level, EQ level, used to have a lot of discussion. So hey, what if this could happen, what if that is designed this way? Even if I'm holding a chip packet, I'd be like, hey, why is this chip designed that way? So a lot of those ideas, I also feel, I'm a strong believer that everyone gets ideas, everyone at one point. Because I think I also run workshops over weekends when I ask this question, that how many of you feel that when a product, like say a Big Basket released this recent feature, which was that once you've added and placed an order, you could still add more products to the cart. And they have given now a 5 to 10 second window where even after you place the order, you can still put more items into your cart. Now, when I ask this question as to how many of you had thought about that idea before even this was in place, and a lot of people raised their hands, that's when we were exactly thinking the same, right? So ideas are something that definitely come to a lot of us, and probably in the same domain, in the same way. But it's all about like, what do you do next? Does it just die in your head? And I always felt like, I want to just take it out there. Intent always matters. That do I want to take it out there for the world to see, or I want to just see how I would, look at that idea and see that, hey, this is how it can materialize, it can solve problem. So daily observation, something that I felt helped me a lot. And of course, I don't want to sound philosophical and spiritual, but meditation helped a lot in just being grounded. Like, even if I just sit and just look at this room, probably there are things that could be improved. There are things that are great and I could take inspiration from, but for that to happen, I need to be here and not like thinking about what I'll do in the evening, right? So that, I think, daily observation, just being curious as to I was attending this boot camp by MIT, where they just talked about, when you look at something, try looking at these principles from, okay, what if you wanted to add something? What if you want to subtract something? How would that product shape? And a lot of things, like if I recall, Amazon wanted to subtract the brick and mortar shop aspect from from the commerce aspect, and then e-commerce was born, and then Amazon got the idea, like, hey, we can do a lot of those things. So I think ideas are there. Then how you execute, how you polish, definitely come to being. But to answer your question, for me, curiosity and just observing helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, love that answer, Sumit. And I think what I've also, I think in our first conversation, you mentioned that how you I think we aligned on the conversation about sharing our knowledge, teaching, and you then mentioned that you were an instructional designer, and working with the folks in corporate and trying to like instill certain courses, stuff like that. Do you think it's because of this mindset of you sharing your knowledge, putting stuff out there, kind of led you to do the kind of work you've been doing?
So I think, and this probably happened in Amazon when I was working. Probably within the first 1 year, I was like, hey, this is not something I want to do. And I feel a lot of people who get that thought, it's a great start, that they've just, it's okay if they do not have the means to achieve. Like, I get a lot of people who come to me and say that, Sumit, I'm at a job where I do not want to do that. And for me, the advice only would be, then just do what they expect you to do. But then you get free Wi-Fi, you get free resources, you get free laptop from the system. Why not you use that to build what you eventually want to be, right? So there are ways, but definitely when I was working, I realized that, hey, probably this is not something I want to do. I want to teach something. And then I run to my mentor, and then she said that there's this term called instructional designer who would be the one building these courses. I'm like, okay. I then go back, I learn all the tools there were to learn in the instructional design domain, and then I come back and say that, hey, I've learned all the tools. And that's what my first realization was, that she said, hey, it's not just about the tools, it's about how you think, what your learners want to learn. And then I realized that there's so many more things than just tools. And then I just did a proper induction into instructional design. But then the whole element of teaching, whole element of enabling someone was always there, and this was just one means to do that. So once I started doing that, I realized that, hey, there are trainers who were, so I build the course, but there are trainers who will take my course and then teach. I was like, no, I just also want not just to build the course, but I also want to teach, because what if the person is not doing a very good job in what I have built, right? So then I switched to corporate training, and then I become a trainer and an L&D expert back in Amazon, where I could also not just create concepts, I could also teach them in a way I wanted. So I also realized that there are so many different ways people learn. There is gamification, there is simulation, there is quizzes, and all those rewards based mechanisms. So all of that also happened, and then I think yes, probably that also had an impact in me, just thinking about, hey, how can I make the experience better? How can I delight the users that I'm teaching, or how can learners actually take what I teach and a lot more from my sessions, and have like something worth their time. So yeah, I think that helped.
For a second, I'd like to zoom in into the world of instruction design, and I think I'm a strong believer that if you're, I think, good team inside, great business outside, and in order to build a great team that's also scalable,
Yes.
you need to teach them, you need to train them,
Mhm.
and I think it's also very common that a lot of enterprises, forget about enterprise, like even smaller companies, startups are not kind of instilling these habits. I want to talk about how you can train your team, and like how it's super important to have like an internal courses set of an ecosystem.
Totally. So fundamentally, I believe that there have always been 6 types of gaps in like enabling any team, and lot of companies just focus on the very first 2, which are the knowledge gap and the skill gap. But then there are 4 more, which is the motivation gap, the communication gap, the environmental gap, the habit gap, right? So primarily there are 6 gaps that exist. A lot of teams feel that if I have just enabled them on the knowledge bit, like they know how to do it, and the skill that they can actually build something, that's enough. Trust me, more often than not, they would have the knowledge, they would have the skill, just they wouldn't have the right motivation to do it. And cracking motivation, I'm telling you, till date, it's been a very tricky part for a lot of big enterprises also, that how do you tap into motivation? How do you make them come to work? How do you make them feel that they're part of the company? Not just part of the company, they are owning the company. And the company's losses would be their losses. The company's achievements would be their achievements. Like, how do you instill that value? Also, the environment gap. Like, for example, I'll just probably give one example. If a team is not doing well, and I've seen, because I was also part of some consulting at my early stage, the teams jump to that, oh, this team is not performing right, probably they do not know something, let's just have them become a part of a learning course, or assign some modules, and they would be able to crack it. And even then the outcomes don't are not there, right? The reason was they had a toxic manager, and they felt like this person would go very micromanaging level, they would go very granular, they would pinpoint mistakes, right? Just removing that manager helped the team perform better, right? It was never the knowledge, it was never the skill, right? So how do you tap into that? And that is something I feel that yes, people, I'm not saying knowledge and skill is not important, that they are, but at the same time, how do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them like be a part of what your vision is? And if you feel excited, does your team feel the same excitement? And of course, like, there will be some who would never be able to be aligned to your vision but are still contributing. Yes, you have to assume that there are outliers, but then I think these are the things that would definitely help go beyond just treating them as mere objects that are just there to contribute to your success. So that is where I feel these
Yeah,
gaps would be
absolutely
improved.
loved it, and I genuinely I believe the same. I think I have a really small team, and I think I try to kind of do that, trying to mentor them, train them, because I feel that the company can be as good as the
Yeah.
team I have, and especially when we are trying to solve problems for tough problems that
Mhm.
maybe their people, like my clients' in-house teams, are not able to solve.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's super important. Uh, so tell us about your life at WhatFix. The kind of work do you do there?
Yeah. So when I joined WhatFix, I joined as a senior instructional designer, and my transition to product design happened within the company. And you know why I attribute so much to putting yourself out there, building your own brand, to not let ideas sit in your head. I attribute my transition in WhatFix to that, because and there's a story to it. Like, I think my third month in the company, I was like, okay, I want to actually imagine what WhatFix could become in 2040. So I just took it as a personal weekend project, and I built something that was, how augmented reality could play a part, and WhatFix just not being in the digital space, but also going beyond. So it was a fun project. Again, as I said, the intent was just to see how that materializes, and I learned the tools, and whatever coding was required, I did that. And I just shared within my team. My manager took notice of that, and then he shared it with the CTO of the company. And the next thing I know, the CTO reached out saying that, hey, would you want to work with me on a project? And I said, sure. And then after the end of that project, he asked me that, hey, would you like to switch to product design? Because that is something that is well suited to what you do, right? So very unconventional route of like switching careers. But then I feel, that happened because then I learned Figma. Then I was always an Adobe XD user, and then I learned Figma and I realized, hey, there are so many things that we could do. And ever since then, my innovation, or my, the whole curiosity bug, I think never got inhibited. It was just more and more, and eventually I was made the lead designer for the R&D wing, which is more of like, what could we do 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? So of course there are foundations where designers are required to help solve problems there, but then the whole labs part. So we have a team called WhatFix Labs, where we just think about like the future, like 5 years from now, what are the products that could take the company further, what are the products that we not to shelve now. So all experimentation, quick testing, all of that. So I think I was there for like 2 good years, and I attribute to the way I just was curious about how we can solve. So yeah.
Well, I had no idea that. I mean, I thought the kind of work WhatFix does is very technical, and I'm actually a big supporter of having sort of an R&D lab with, like, especially with tech around, like, around tech.
Yes.
Right. Tell us about the kind of experiment that you do there, and if you can also share, how does it also affect businesses?
Sure. So I think in our space, where we want to improve an employee's journey at every touch point, I think of course we started with onboarding journeys, and helping them learn applications better, and also save a lot of businesses cost, because a lot of initial costs are spent in just upskilling the employee, right? A lot of change management things, communication is one big use case. So it started with that, but then we also realized that yes, there are new users, but eventually all new users become veteran users, right? And once users become veteran, they know the product in and out, they know the processes in and out. How do we help them then? So at that point, they are not really looking for learning. They're probably looking for efficiency. They're looking for automation, right? So can we solve, things for them then, right? So that I think was what became the foundation for the labs bit, where we wanted to see that, hey, what are the things that can help users not just learn things, but also efficiently execute in a like very in a much streamlined way, and not just like what we expect them to do. So there are a few projects which probably I can't name them at this point, but all under the wraps of helping them achieve outcomes faster, efficiently, and more accurately. So that's what labs been targeting. So yeah.
Awesome. I think I meet a lot of people, a lot of designers working at enterprises, big corporates. The biggest problem they have all the time is that they don't have time to upskill, and they don't have time to experiment. Considering the kind of time we are living in, is like, it's, if you're not doing it enough, I think you can become obsolete very soon. And in your case, like, you have like a totally different world out there, right? How have you been managing, and if there are some tips for us?
Totally. So I always ask this question in either my one-on-ones or in corporate workshops, like, what makes you feel alive, right? And if a person is honest about just that answer, and do not have to tell me that, but hearts of hearts, what keeps you alive, right? For example, I've seen designers who are working, but then they say that, Sumit, this is not me. right? Recently I got a message after my last week's workshop where the person said that, hey Sumit, thanks for teaching us what you did, but I have been looking at a lot of portfolios, copying a lot of these things, these animations and these stuff, but once the product finally got built, I was like, this is not me. This is not having that essence what I normally talk about, and that only happens because we are running, and for a lack of a better word, it is a race out there, and everybody's just trying to compete. Okay, if this tool is better, let me just jump and adopt that. Let me just read that book because everybody's reading, right? While that could lead you somewhere, but in the whole process, the whole identity loss, which I feel is like the biggest tragedy that could happen, is that you just do not have your own voice as to what you are, what you want to do, and you don't even have time for that, right? So I feel like first is identifying what you are, just even writing those down, because I feel like sometimes in the whole mess people forget that hey, this is what I love doing, this is what actually helped me identify, and that is what the word I want to use here is brand, right? For me, brand has always been about, like, in this room, if I'm not there and people are talking about me, what are they talking about? That for me is the definition of a brand, and I feel that that becomes very important. That and probably I'll give you an example. Like, I have always been known as, and this might sound like a show off, but I'll just do it irrespective, an ideator. Like, that's the term that has always been associated, that hey, Sumit is an ideator, Sumit thinks, Sumit is an innovator. So every time there's a requirement for a project which requires like a lot of thinking, a lot of crazy experimentation, they would always pick me. And this has not been built because I was in the room telling everyone that, hey, you know what, I ideate. It was just my work speaking. It was just me putting myself out there, right? So I feel, what you actually love doing, what you actually are, just find time. And you should actually have a lot of time for this, because this is something which keeps you alive, and just create, just build, just put yourself out there. Being shameless is also one mantra that I always follow. I have not, and this is what I keep telling, that of all the ideas that I put out there, and LinkedIn is one forum that I use a lot, I have not deleted one negative comment. Yes, I might not respond to them because sometimes I feel that it's just coming out of sheer just denial that, hey, this is not a good idea, this is fine, but I've not deleted even one single comment. There was one example where I was just observing the delivery partners like Swiggy, Zomato, and when I was just looking at them and other two-wheeler riders, I see that the helmet pattern, for the delivery partners, it just goes up and down a lot because they're always looking at the directions versus this thing. So I just put that post out there with an animated that, these are two helmets and one is just going up and down a lot, and people related a lot, and that also became a very viral post. But then there was somebody from Europe who had never faced this problem, and then he said that, hey Sumit, I don't relate to this, this is not an accurate representation and whatnot. Of course, he's not been in India, and so many things, but the idea being that you being shameless, you being out there, and putting your identity out there would definitely help a lot. So now if I just come down to your original question of like just giving some tips, personally I feel that it is a myth that we don't have time, trust me. And if you can find that, I'm not saying it's a healthy habit, but I have been known to even skip my dinners and lunches just because I had an idea and I would just rush to my drawing board and just sketch it out there.
Your idea actually looks like that, that like an idea that comes into your head like at 2 a.m. And if you can't execute it, you're gonna forget about it.
Exactly. And now when I started doing that, now if I could show you, I have like 300 plus ideas. So I'm just sorted for the next whole year. If I just put one idea a day, I probably would have something.
I would like to know, how are you like noting it down? Is it you're sitting and like you have a book with you and you're just writing it?
So I started with that, but then I realized like it's not like possible to carry a book every time. So now I use like a simple to-do app. But whatever happens, I just click a photo if that inspired me or that's something I just want to even break it down further, right? So that eventually started to whole list of ideas with. So even now today when I feel like, hey, I'm not getting, and I get irritated as to why my brain is still. Now it's come to that point, so I'll just open this list, and this list helps a lot in just me, hey, last week you just were thinking about this, and just go back and then break it down. And trust me, people, I don't know why they feel, and it's valid. I should not comment on that. But if they feel scared that people would laugh, people would say that, hey, this is such a shitty idea or such a
Yeah.
normal thing to do. It's just common sense. I would still say just go out there and do it. You have no clue the people who have never thought about the way you thought and could relate to that, and that person is sitting in some tier 2 tier 3 town and just saw that and probably got an idea and helped that. And it's happened to me. That's why I can just say that has like that's so true, that people relate at all levels. I think there was this one time where Swiggy's VP of design Saptarshi was just looking at. I had this one thing, like one phase where I was just looking at Swiggy left, right, and center, be it branding, be it the improvements, and I was just putting myself out there, and Saptarshi was actually commenting on every post. And for me to have a reach like that, somebody at that level who had probably no business looking at LinkedIn and just going actually and commenting and taking the time to do that, you have no idea how that reach could help you. uh, if I don't know if there's a time for a tiny story, but I could probably start with
go
that.
ahead.
Yeah. So this happened back in Hyderabad when just right in front of my house there's a coconut vendor shop, and if now when you go to Hyderabad, you'll see that most of the coconut vendor shops, they have this half cut bottle with all the straws there, and you just expected to pull one straw and drink. So when I looked at that, and this is the COVID times, when I looked at that, I was like, a lot of people, I don't know where they come from, where do they wash hands, they're all touching these straws and pulling one, and of course when they pull one straw, they accidentally touch a lot of other straws from the drinking end, and this is the same thing I would pull and put in my mouth. So how do I solve that, right? There was no concept of, what design thinking should I imply, which framework should I do? It was just pure simple problem that, hey, this is not hygienic, how do I make it hygienic? When I started building on that, I rushed to a supermarket, DMart, and I got like a plastic container, and I started cutting that shape and putting all the straws, and I was just designing a mechanism where you just do a tap at the bottom and one straw comes up. I designed that prototype, I tested that, and then I realized that while it worked great for a lot of straws, but if there's just 2-3 straws left, it doesn't come up effectively. I tweaked it. I made the container horizontal so that all the straws are at the bottom, and now you just pull one straw and you're not touching any end, you're touching the middle of the straw. I built that. I went to the vendor and I was like, hey, can you use this? And that was 3 years ago, and the last time I went to Hyderabad, that vendor has still he's been using that prototype, right? So that happened, and when I eventually was like on ADP list, I was mentoring somebody, and that person turned out to be in the coconut business, and I showed him this idea, and he actually said that, hey, how much are you selling this for, and what would you cost for 100,000 of these products? And I was like, hey, I never felt like this would be a Shark Tank, but then that happened, and so all I'm trying to say is, just if you start putting yourself out there, you never know who it'll resonate with and what it can lead to. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying do it with that intent. Do it with an intent that you want to reach out, you want to grow, you want to build your brand. Do it with an intent because it made you happy. And this might sound philosophical, but I think fundamentally, if that is true, then nothing else would matter. These all things would come by default. But if you can see some, like I see posts, like people have built a tiny app or hand gestures that could do something, and they just said that this is out of fun and curiosity, and it just blew up. But the underlying intent should be very clear, that who you're doing it for. When I interview designers, I think I'll give an example. There were 2 designers who had the same problem of solving the problems of like how pregnant ladies travel in metros and how their experience could be better. There was one person who said that, Sumit, I did all the online research, and I have all these stats. I've seen the metro rail systems of Europe, I've seen metro rail systems of US, and this is what my data says. Another person who had done nothing of that, she was just traveling back and forth for a month just to observe how pregnant ladies operate. So you can only see which designer would I pick. Somebody who actually wanted to be on the ground and solve those problems, right? So just those things, as to you do out of love, probably would help a lot. I know it's a very long answer, but sorry.
I absolutely love the story, Sumit. I think this instantly like give me makes me think about how a lot of us are just trying to put us in a box, that okay, we are Figma experts, or like however you want to name it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's that's also taking us to space where we are not doing enough or like thinking enough, and we are just directly jumping into execution because from the very first step we are just thinking about the final result, and I think that's actually very wrong, I feel, because I think then anyone can do it, right? What specific value that you're bringing to the table?
Absolutely.
Right? And do you feel the same, that there are a lot of people like that?
Totally. I think when I give an example or probably a corollary around that I'm never looking for designers who can build the best solution. Always looking for designers who can find the right problem. Because the moment you tell me that, Sumit, here in the wall is where the leaking sound is coming, I can have 10 plumbers, carpenters who not to just solve that problem. And there are people out there who just want to be told what to solve. But that one person who's actually figured out that, I think, is bringing a lot of value, right? So of course, and now in with AI, if I'm telling you, there are PMs who've been building products left, right, center because they feel that, hey, they never needed a designer in the first place, because now they can find the problem and they can also build. So the lines are definitely blurring. And if you were only bringing, like, you can build the best solution, you can bring the best tool knowledge, trust me, like that eventually will fade out. And like then what remains is your ability to be curious, your ability to finding out whether this was actually true, going back, iterating. I think all of those skill sets would always remain, and I call these skills as AI proof. Curiosity would always become AI proof. Yeah. So that definitely I resonate the same.
Yeah. I think when we were having a conversation, you also talked about how, and I agree with that, like how building a brand is super important, whether like a corporate one or otherwise. What's your take on that? Like, what are your efforts, and what do you think more people should do?
So when it comes to brand, see, first thing, it is a myth that brand gets built. I always believe that everybody has a brand. Of course, that's not a good brand. Like, for example, if I just give a very simple example, the first brand that comes to your mind when I use the word toothpaste, or first brand when I use the word pizza, that name is coming for a reason, because they have positioned themselves that way. They have been offering themselves that way, right? So everybody has a brand. Of course, people choose a brand over others for a lot of different reasons, that, hey, this is going to give us the best value based on the time you invest in and all of that, right? So everybody has a brand, but in terms of you being out there and differentiating yourself from the rest, definitely takes some effort, because you first have to identify as to. So in corporate, I think there's a one framework that I have been following, and when I have this tiny workshop called BYOB, Build Your Own Brand, and there I talk about that whenever you join a company, and this is for all the designers out there who've been veterans, who've been stuck in just one position, or people who are just joining a company, I say for the first 6 months, just observe. You don't have to go out there and start solving problems, because you never know what the brand has already been doing. So first 6 months, just learn. And that is the period that I give myself, that 6 months, be it a new team also. After that, there are two areas you could always operate in. One is you've identified processes. For example, there's process A, process B, process C, process D. But then between process B to C, there is nothing. There's always a gap, right? So you have identified the gap, and you have started working towards, okay, how do I solve this gap? How do I do a pilot? How do I drive results and then showcase your value? I'll give you a very simple example. Back in Amazon, there is a process, I don't know if that process still exists, but in transaction risk, what we used to do was we used to look at a lot of these, like, for example, if you've placed an order, I would want to look at your online activity. I would look at your Facebooks, your socials, your LinkedIn, everything. And that used to take some time. And this I'm talking about 2014-15, when I started, working on these processes. And that will take some time to just investigate. So what I did was, I was like, okay, if it's taking an average of 3 minutes, can I save these 3 minutes? So that was my very first Chrome plugin. I called it Eagle Eye, which just one click, all your socials would open in multiple tabs. So it saved 3 minutes per investigator. And when I extrapolated it, I found out that it was actually saving 69 to 70 hours per week. And I did a test, I did a pilot, I showed it to my team, the team lead got impressed, and then suddenly across 3 sites that plugin was used. Of course, probably now they would have developed it a lot more. But definitely the idea is you identify gaps in your company and start solving for it. But then there are people who say that Sumit, there are no gaps in my team. Everything is working very
Yeah.
good. If that is a scenario, then you can always look for efficiency. If process A takes 3 days, can you cut down in 2 days? Can you cut down in 1 day? So that, like, I'm yet to meet one person who can say that, hey, I don't have any more time that I can save on this one. This is most efficient process. That has never happened.
How do you make sure that you are aware that there could be gaps and you can be more efficient? I think a lot of
Yes.
times they're just like
Yeah.
fighting their own battle.
That is what I mentioned earlier. Just being observant and taking a step back as to if you're doing it in a certain way. Are there better processes out there that have cracked this? For example, I think a simple stakeholder review, as a process. Now, for that, is this the best way that your company is doing it, or have other companies, for example the Meta design team or the Spotify design team, have they cracked it and in a much more efficient way? Have you found out about that? Have you experimented with something else that has saved time, right? So for me, dissociating yourself from what you've been doing and actually looking at how can I improve it, just asking that one question, probably there will never be an answer, probably there'll be a lot of answers, but for that to happen you need to dissociate. So for me, being like you dissociate yourself, you be curious, you ask the right questions, I think will get you started in a lot better way than somebody who's, as you said, just stuck in that loop of just fighting battles every day. So that's it.
Oh, I love it. Love that approach, and I wish more and more managers follow that as well. Right, and I think this and like we've talked a lot about like the processes and you executing things. I think it'll be a missed opportunity if we don't talk about the confusion that AI is bringing to the to the corporates and like to your roles. People are not able to plan like for 3 months, 6 months, like they are not able to. A lot of people are getting laid off, and all that. And I'm sure even like more than how much it is making a difference or affecting the market, it's definitely making a lot of people confused. What are your thoughts around that?
So one quote that I always follow and I preach is never be corporate ready, always be industry ready, right? By that I mean that people who've been associated with one company for, let's say, 3 years, 6 years, and suddenly they're laid off, they should never be in a position where they can only say that, hey, I only used the tools and the processes because I was associated with company A or B or C. But as they start upskilling with industry, so for example, if I am in a healthcare industry, I would not be just looking at what my company offers or provides or the problems we try to solve, but across industries, what is that common sentiment, or what is that common problem that everybody is trying to solve. Because once you do that, once you become industry ready, be it the tools, be it the processes, be it a designer at that level, you can fit into any space, because then your pedigree becomes that you take me into your company and I'm there to solve problems, not just that, hey, I have to unlearn a lot of things and learn, right? So that for me is always the primary thing. Like, for example, would I spend my weekend over pondering, hey, what fix could solve next, or would I just be looking at where the industry is heading and can I upskill myself there? Can I then use those skills into what fix? That's a secondary question. But of course, I do not want to be at a place where I am completely aloof as to where things are, and then I only get to know once I'm laid off. Because that, I think, gives you confidence. That also gives you a lot of leeway to test, to build, as I said, your own brand. So personally, I feel everybody should aim for that. And yes, the harsh truth is that AI is out there to probably impact some jobs, but then how do you, and that's one thing which I want everyone to just write, like, is my skill set AI proof? And just to do a litmus test, and that is something I recall an example from one of my Deloitte interviews. So when I went to Deloitte and they just put me in a room. I don't know if they still do that practice, but they just put me in a room without Wi-Fi. They took my phone. They said, you'll get after 1 hour. They just gave me one blank PPT and they asked me to design a deck. of course, when you start in a very normal world, you would go for inspiration. You would go for, hey, what are the trends around this problem? What are the data around this problem? But once you're in a room with nothing, no internet, nothing, what you produce after that 1 hour is your litmus test of where you are as a designer today, right? And I want all of us to just do that. Cut yourself and just say, okay, I want to design a landing page, right? You will never get Pinterest, you will never get Mobbin, you will never get all these inspiration websites. You just have to start from what you have in your head.
Yeah. What was the brief though?
The brief was, so they gave me a problem around, I think it was one of the defense sector problems where you have to design something, for a defense sector, and this is the audience type, and it should be a learning. So they gave me the outcomes that at the end of your course, what would the learners be able to achieve, and what sort of strategy would you deploy if you want to use gamification, why you would use gamification, all of that, right? And what I've seen is like this brief or any other problem that we pick, we first start with, hey, let's just look at how market is doing it. What are the inspiration? I'm not saying it's not wrong, but if this is not there, can you still call yourself a designer? And the output that would come after that 1 hour thing would exactly be that today this is your level of skill, this is your level of practice, this is your level of knowledge, right? Because at the end of the day, I feel that in a room like this where there's no chat GPT, in a room like this where I cannot look at, hey, I have to give the best answer. Whatever I'm giving has to come from experience, has to come from what I have been doing, practicing day in, day out. So that I feel asking your skill sets and questioning whether they are AI proof or not, and what it takes to go in the zone where AI can never touch you. For example, I feel that, one space where AI is still very far behind is how you pitch your ideas, right? You can have the best idea, but if you cannot convince a room full of people, you cannot convince the stakeholders that, this is the direction that we need to take. Of course, backed by data, but AI can never come into that space and say that, hey, I can also convince you. I can definitely build solutions, but how do you pitch? How do you convince? A lot of Shark Tank ideas, if you follow Shark Tank, you would see that some of the comments are always like, hey, probably the idea is great, you just were not able to pitch it to me today, right? Hence, you're not getting the funding. So pitching is a skill, convincing others, providing rational to your thoughts. All of those things for me, I think AI is a lot of catching up to do there. So, working in these spaces also probably would help a lot. So I think, that.
Yeah, absolutely love that take. And I think more... I think in order to find like someone who think critically, that's a great exercise to just leave them in one room and just ask them to do something.
Absolutely.
Interesting. What are your favorite tools that you've been working around, and something that you're looking forward to?
Totally. So I am never loyal to one particular tool. I've just been hopping, and I think everybody should do that. That's just my take. That the tools can probably, like, one tool can make you reach 70% of your outcome, and rest 30% is just you. Then another tool could take you to the 80%, and then rest has to be you. But these days, I think I've been experimenting a lot with motion as to how I breathe life into things. So I hopped from Kriya to Hedra to I tried so Kling is current Runway I tried, and then Kling is finally the one I'm currently sticking to, and not just because the output is good, but also the ROI it gets me in terms of the credit to my expense ratio, because I always want to see as to if I'm spending, let's say, $10 per month, and how much credit utilization is there and how much credit offering is there from their end. And I think hands down, Kling has been the one who's been giving me the best of both the worlds. So that's one. For my, in the list of tools, and this is gonna sound very cliche, but I consider my brain also as one of the tools that I would always want to use, because I want to look back and see that, hey, what stemmed, like how did this idea stem? What was the inspiration? How do I relate? So I do a lot of this mind mapping exercises, and I feel that some of these cannot be achieved by a tool. Some of these things have to come from within you, as to asking the fundamentals as to if this is the idea, what can what kind of impact are you trying to achieve? What kind of users are you trying to impact? Is this the best idea out there, or can something else? And one good exercise that I also do is, once an output is there, I just say that if I were to scratch this and build something completely different, how would that look like? And that gives you a lot of these possibilities that you would never think, because just thinking in one direction. So but again, for tools, for videos, I use Kling. For brainstorming as a sparring partner, I use ChatGPT a lot. And for voices, I use 11 Labs, has been my favorite for voiceovers. I am working on a project for which I feel I think Gemini would be a good approach, but then I have to still see. But yes, tools, I have been hopping. So what I also do is I subscribe to a lot of these newsletters just to keep me posted or updated on what are the latest trends and
You want to
tools in the
name one?
market. Sure. So Runway has this amazing newsletter that just lists down every week. It publishes a report where what are the top tools in the market people are using, both in B2B and B2C spaces. I'm not saying go out there and use all those 50 tools, but just learning about them, just one website scanning can help you a lot in, this is the problem I wanted to solve, and this is exactly the tool now they have built. What kind of updates they've been doing on these tools, what can 5.1 do, 5.2 do, all of those things. So subscribing to newsletters, Substack is something that I have been using a lot these days to just understand as to where how people are experimenting. A Medium subscription, I think, is one great investment. And of course, I think I made this one post where 23,000 to 24,000 a month I spend on just tools. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I...
Which is the most expensive one?
So most expensive, I think, would be... I think I was using Midjourney, which was like 3,500 a month before I switched to Kling. But then when I used to get these messages, and I was never doing this exercise, but my wife saw it once and she was like, "Hey, I just want you to just put down all your expenses," and I did. And I'm like, "Okay, this is not good."
Like
but
almost $300, like $350 a month.
Correct.
That's a
Yes,
lot.
yeah. And it was happening every month. And then I also defended myself that, hey, I don't go out eating, I don't go out shopping. So this is a very good investment. But then I also realized that when I preach or when I just go out there and take a workshop and say that, hey, you can build this in this tool, I also get DMs saying that, hey, Sumit, are there any free alternatives? Then I realized that probably not everybody would be in that space to just spend money or experiment, because
people make like 4 or 5 accounts.
Yes, exactly. So, and that's why I also realized that how good prompting is helpful in, because you can't experiment all the time. So, learning about, and now when prompt engineering has now been established as a very core skill for everybody who's using AI. Just go out there and find your niche to how you are doing prompt engineering. I'll tell you something. I think if the question is still around, like, how do you navigate in the world of AI? One thing I always believe in, I've got like 10 books purely based on how AI works. This is not tools. This is not output based. This is just functioning of AI. And I feel why designers should be reading about the fundamentals, because I get a lot of these things, a flag that, hey, stop reading, start experimenting. But I also feel it should be a balance of both, because when you're working with the PM on an AI project, and the PM is or a tech lead is just throwing jargons at you that, Sumit, hey, the model might hallucinate, or we should be experimenting in a deterministic versus probabilistic way. You not being in that space, and you will just nod your head and say that, hey, whatever you're doing is right, and you will have to design an experience based on their tech limitations, because they have now cornered you. Of course, nobody intends to corner anybody, but it's just how the space is, that they have cornered you in a space that, hey, our AI model can only do this. You will not be able to suggest ideas. Why? Because you do not know how the functioning is. So what, when I started reading a lot about how AI functions, what is their model tuning looking like, what sort of output, what sort of prompt engineering, now I'm in a better space in a room to also push back and say that, hey, can we take this approach? And more often than not, those ideas have been considered, those suggestions have been taken. So I feel that sort of learning, I feel everyone should do. And it might seem like it's like because otherwise, if you remember, like 2022, 23, people were actually calling it magic. People were actually calling it like, we do not know how this works. And I don't agree with this quote that, hey, you need not know how electricity works as long as you can find ways of implementing electricity. Trust me, that is slightly different because here, as a designer, your decisions would ultimately impact the business, ultimately impact the use case. If, let's say, you design something that, will take 40 seconds to generate one AI output, and you as a designer is okay with that, but a lot of users are not using it because 40 seconds is actually a lot. Trust me, ultimately it'll impact the business. So how do you then would you ever be in a position to suggest memory as a use case, that, hey, can we look at memory and have better accuracy in outputs? All of that could only come once you have done some learning and not just been experimenting. So that's one thing I feel learning is always like awesome. Like that should always happen.
I'm super pumped for sure. I think it's great to see someone actually spending money onto the learning, and the value of learning is we all can see that from your side, Sumit. Okay, that takes us to the end of
Sure.
the conversation, and I mean, I don't want to make it like a cliche question, but I'm genuinely curious about two things. One, the kind of stuff you're trying to teach to people, and the second would be like, where are you trying to go with this?
So to answer the first one, I think my Instagram handle, and like it had a statement that I always believe in, like to help or enable people become the best versions of themselves. Like that is something I always believe in, because when I teach something, enable somebody, upskill them, and then they come back saying that, hey Sumit, I just put that idea out there in my team and they actually appreciate it. They actually felt that yes, it had value. Like that gets me going. And I don't know if it's out of just the love, or I also want to see the impact it creates, but definitely for me it will never be just about one domain, one topic. It has always been about that, how do you achieve the best with your own skill sets. How do you, so if I could just give them that direction, like for example, even after a Myntra talk, a lot of people walked up to me and said, Sumit, there's this fun fact where there's one person who came up to me and she started spotting problems right in that like area, and she said that, Sumit, the washroom signs, the men and women signs are very confusing. I accidentally walked into a men's washroom, and
Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah, and she mentioned that, hey, I have this idea I want to implement. Just that on me that, okay, probably there is something that people are relating to, and they can go back there and build their own brands. So that probably is something probably I would want to continue. Now, in terms of where I want to go ahead with this, I think I would definitely not want to associate myself with just one industry. For me, I would want to go very general, very horizontal, and see where as much as I can find time, because I love coaching, I love mentoring, and probably an agency like you, but more in the consultation or teaching side, where I can enable, like for example, as I think we were also discussing about how Ansh Mehra took his journey, where he's enabling people on AI and its use cases, and how eradicating that fear of something that you need to be fearful of. Just those things. Corporate hacking is something that I'm really passionate about. Like if anybody who is joining corporates for the first time, and I think it's majority of people, they start their journey with that. Just hacking your growth. How do you navigate those waters? How do you deal with people? And people dealing also is a skill which I feel AI cannot touch. Like, how do you put yourself out there? So those are the things that I would want to like continue to enable people in that space. Yeah.
Awesome, Sumit. I think I've absolutely loved, thanks for spilling the beans, about your journey, the kind of stuff you've been doing. Super inspiring. I hope we do this again.
Absolutely. Yes.
And thanks a lot for
Great.
hopping on
Thank
the
you so
podcast.
much for having me. This is great.